Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. I shall see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. What should we talk about today? That's a good question. You know, what's been going on in the gaming sphere? Baldur's Gate is all the rage right now, which is pretty cool, to be honest. You know, if you don't know what Baldur's Gate is like, it's a video game tabletop RPG, I think. Kind of like it has its specific genre name, but I forgot what it is. It's something RPG, but it's not tabletop RPG. It's like VRPG or something like that. Is that right? That doesn't sound right. Let's see. Hold on. Baldur's Gate genre, and don't just tell me RPG. Google. RPVG. It's something like video role-playing game or something like that. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow, it's 9:24 p.m. on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. You might be like, hey, that sounds like something you would enjoy. You know, you played Divinity Original Sin 2, and are you going to play it? And I'd be like, wow, that's like a factoid, which I'm not even sure if I brought up before on the channel. But yes, I will be playing it with my friends probably on the weekend or so. But yeah, I mean, that entire genre of game is not that popular. I don't know many games in it apart from Divinity and the Baldur's Gate series, to be honest. I don't even know if there's any other series which has that sort of, well, is that sort of genre, where it's a tabletop RPG, but, you know, in a video game, so thus you can actually make things a bit more grandiose at the cost of making things a bit more linear, I suppose, compared to an actual tabletop RPG. But it's pretty cool. Well, I assume it's cool. You know, I mean, there's been rave reviews about it, to be honest, and, you know, it's something I'm interested in, so I don't see why it wouldn't be cool. And I thoroughly enjoyed Divinity Original Sin 2. If you don't know, that's along the same sort of thing, except for Baldur's Gate 3 is like based off Dungeons and Dragons. Well, Forgotten. I'm not sure if it's actually based off Forgotten Realms, but at least the mechanic structure is based around Dungeons and Dragons, so it's something I'm much more intimately familiar with. I think Divinity Original Sin might be its own thing, but like its own system, but I don't really know. But I played out with two of my friends not too long after it came out, I don't think. I feel like I bought it along the same time I bought the Steam controller because there was like a bundle of it or something, which is absolutely insane because Divinity Original Sin 2, I guess, is a game you can play with a Steam controller. It's a game much better played with mouse and keyboard, I'm going to be honest. But I understand why you could play it with a Steam controller. The whole point of Steam controller is you can use it as a controller, but you can also use it as a mouse with a touchpad. But yeah. It's a game I played and I have a lot of good memories playing it, despite the fact, you know, I'm very much a lore-based person when it comes to these sort of games, or like maybe a better way of putting it is social-based when it comes to like these RPG sort of things. I like to talk to people. I like to, you know, do these, you know, social events, etc., etc. I like to find out how the story goes, rather than, you know, strategizing mechanics or, you know, like having my own chaos and fun. And the two people I played with are, you know, different in that regard, where they, one of them just likes fighting and quite a lot, and, you know, likes to strategize, I suppose, with that sort of combat, and likes to do cool things in combat, and another one likes to, you know, I suppose, be a little bit chaotic and accrue wealth and steal things. So it worked out pretty well. You know, one of them was like a warrior who became like a summoner, and then another person, the other friend was like a thief who just like stole all the spell books, and I was just like a person who just spoke to everyone, basically. It was like, this is what's going to happen story wise, or this is what is happening story wise, and where we need to go and who we need to talk to. And it works out well because, you know, I was playing a caster and the spellbooks are expensive. You know, if I was playing it just my normal way, I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't be able to afford all these spellbooks. But, you know, a friend was just like, oh, that's all right, I'll just steal them all for you. Yeah, so I have a lot of good memories of Divinity Original Sin 2. And some weird memories as well. I don't know if I guess I'm going to talk about, like, is it called VRPGs? Is that what it's called? Hold on. VRPG, is this a thing? No, but that's a 4chan thing. Baldur's Gate 3 genre. Is it like CRPG? Is that it? What is CRPG? Computer role-playing game. Yeah, it's computer role-playing game. There we go. Apparently it was a few. Baldur's Gate, Planescape, Pillars of Eternity. I've heard of actually some of these, but never actually played them. What's the difference between RPG and CRPG? Often describes RPGs that have design philosophies that are based on computer input. What? Is it about like every role-playing game which is on the computer? Okay, well, I mean, Planescape, Baldur's Gate, Divinity, Original Sin are considered under it, so I guess we'll talk about CRPG. Oh, but it's because it originated with a tabletop RPG term, and it was just to differentiate it, but along the same school lines, school of thought. Okay, fair enough. I was gonna say, yeah, I had a lot of fun playing Divinity Original Sin 2. A lot of fun memories, like of these like climactic story modes. I guess spoilers, mild spoilers to Divinity Original Sin 2. It's been out for a while now, and I also don't remember the story that well. But I remember there's this one fight where basically you fight a load of oil, fire slimes, and while you're standing in oil the entire time. So the entire time everyone is burning, and what you have to do is you have to try and keep this one NPC alive throughout the entire thing. That was an absolute chaos of a battle, but it was really funny. And I have a lot of good memories because I played a very supportive role in that game. I started out, I don't even remember what class I started playing, but along the way, and I think I started playing out some sort of wizard, mage, some sort of elementalist, and then eventually I just started shifting into being like, I'm going to accrue all the buffs possible. So I basically started multi-classing into like every single possible path to make sure I could get every single buff, like the bare minimum to get that buff. And it was insane because by the end of the game, I had like 30 buffs. And here's a hot tip for you, I suppose, if you ever play Divinity Original Sin 2. If you're in conversation, buff timers don't tick down, which is the craziest thing. So there used to be... so our strategy basically was, when we thought a fight was going to happen for a cutscene, just had to make sure that I was not the one initiating a conversation. So I was free to move around during the cutscene. And what would happen would be like, all of the other free characters would get in the conversation of a cutscene, you know, and as I say, buff timers don't tick down. So then I would just cast every single one of my buffs on each of them. So all my 30 buffs on each of them, and of course I could do that because the buff timers don't tick down while they're in conversation. So then we start the battle with everyone just extremely buffed up, and then I just like cast one buff of like dodge on myself. We just annihilate things that way. So that's why I had a huge amount of utility, just an absurd amount of utility spells from what I recall. Just like a ridiculous amount of buffs, and then I had like I think I had like the rain spells and that sort of thing, because eventually I ran out of buffs to actually like accrue. And like, I just remember my toolbar, it was just like I filled up like my toolbar and my extra hotkey like toolbar as well, which is absolutely ridiculous. I need to have like a second page of just like spells. I was basically like a spell monkey, as the term goes, I suppose, in RPG terms. You're usually a skill monkey, so so I had a lot of good memories, I suppose, executing that strategy. A very strange strategy, mind you. What other good memories did I have? I mean, that sort of memory is always very amusing to think of. From a boss's perspective, a boss, you know, saying something like, "I will end you," and then just like, you know, my friend who was playing like with Dwarf Warrior, just sort of standing there staring as this like lizard folk. And is it lizard folk? I can't remember what the lizard people are called in Divinity. Just like this lizard folk, like priest or whatever, running around just like casting a million buffs on all the party members as they just stare down a boss. So I like to imagine that from an in-game perspective, and it's very funny. But there's also, what else? Like spoilers, like mega spoilers with Divinity Original Sin 2. Of what happened in our campaign. Like the ending sequence was really fantastic. I think it like worked really well from a cinematic standpoint. Whereas like, you know, I can't remember who we fought. We fought someone, and then eventually like one of my friends made like a deal with like the vampire person, I think. And he was like, I'm here to collect on my thing. And then like my friend was like, no, I ain't gonna do that. And then he got killed like immediately, which, you know, was pretty sad for him because he missed out on like a lot of the final fight. But it worked really well cinematically, I think. Because he took like a pact with a vampire, and then we had to like fight a different thing, and then it came down to the final thing where it was like the three characters, like me, my friend, and the Red Prince, who we took along as an NPC, all facing off, you know, trying to be like, who's going to be the one to get all the source. And then I won in the end, and outrageously so, because I was just like, you know, I don't have any I have very little damage. I think I had like a huge amount of CC. So what I basically did was, you know, it was my friend who was like the DPS of our... But I don't know why I'm telling you this, because like you probably don't care, but it's my friend who was a DPS of a party, and then the Red Prince was built as a mage, and I was built as a utility. The DPS friend basically just took out the Red Prince like immediately, because he was like, I had to, you know, he's the only one who's got damage. And then it was just me 1v1ing my friend. And the only damaging thing I remember is I had, from a Red Prince's storyline, I could summon a dragon like pet as a summon, and then basically I just continuously CC'd my friend over and over again. Like I just like CC'd him and I blinded him, and then I just like dodged all his next attacks, and then I CC'd him again, and it was just that over and over again. And eventually I won, and then I got to have a grand choice of being like, oh, what am I going to do with all the source? And then in my playthrough, I released all the source, so everyone had access to the source. A source revolution, source being like the magic of their world or whatever. Whether it was a good or bad choice, I don't know, but I felt like it was the most in character choice. You know, fairness for all, I suppose. But yeah, I also had some like not bad memories, I suppose, but things that spoiled it, because of course I'm very narratively driven when it comes to these sort of things, and this is a thing which is the saddest thing about, you know, my playthrough of Divinity Original Sin 2, which, you know, it's just like the rotten cherry, I suppose, on the top of a beautiful, delicious cake, a black forest gâteau, which is fine, because, I mean, you could just take off one cherry, you don't have to, like, eat it or anything, but it's sort of just like, you know, it would have been nice to have that cherry as well. But basically, there was this bug which occurred, which apparently only occurs in multiplayer, I suppose, while you're playing this game, so just be careful, where basically, if you have any companions on you with a quest that you do, like in your campaign, I was trying to think how to phrase it, to like fill up your party or whatever. We chose the Red Prince. He can only be like assigned, I suppose, to one person, and I think it's the person who invites him on the journey, which I did, which made sense because I was the one who was most invested in a story quest. I was like doing a story quest throughout the entire thing, but at the start of like chapter 2 or something, that NPC character gets unassigned from, you know, the player characters once again, and then he gets reassigned to whoever is the next person who first talks to him. I think it's like when you get off a boat or something like that, and that's what happened basically, is like, you know, he was assigned to me, so I was the one who could actually initiate all his dialogue and conversation, and I can actually befriend him, I suppose, throughout the story quest, except for in that chapter, for whatever reason, you know, he got de-assigned, and then my friend was the first one who spoke to him, because, you know, I don't blame my friend, of course, like he didn't know what was going on, and then he was the one who like Red Prince got assigned to, so he was the only one who could progress the Red Prince's story. This is not going to make any sense if you've not played this game, but basically he was the only one who could progress the Prince's story, and then he was the only one who gained friendship for him, I suppose, for that chapter. So I basically missed out on an entire chapter of gaining friendship and advancing the story with the Red Prince. So when it came to the final end part of a game where it was all about, you know, like concluding his story arc, not only did we have to like rush through the story arc, because the entire time I was like trying to trigger his story quest, and he was just refused to speak with me. It wasn't until we were like gonna go and move on to the next chapter, it was like, oh, you know, it's a bug, you know, my friend, you have to be the one to initiate the conversation with him to actually start the story quest. So not only could I not do it at my own pace, which was a bit sad, you know, obviously I don't blame my friend for that. It's a bug in the game, to be perfectly honest. It meant I missed out on the story. But the saddest thing by far to me is the fact that at the very end of the game, you have like the climactic part of the story quest. You know, if you did the story quest all the way through to the end, you basically befriend the Red Prince, and it like you tie up his story arc. But he just wouldn't do the ending thing with me, because he ending like sequence of story, because he was just like, you know, we're not close enough, so sorry. And then it meant that he would actually try to vie for the power of the source himself in the battle, rather than being like, okay, relinquish it to you. You might be like, but does that matter? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Of course, it didn't actually affect the gameplay experience or anything like that, but it matters to me. I told you, I'm very narrative driven. I'm very storyteller driven, I suppose. You know, if you are like, hey, what sort of D&D like player archetype are you? I'm either the actor of a story or the storyteller. I don't remember which one. I think they're two separate ones, but I very much fall into both those categories. But it's such a little thing that no one cares about except for me, obviously. But it's just like, I really wish that story tied up like really nicely and neatly, because the Red Prince's story is really nice. It's basically he is royalty, by name the Red Prince, and it worked with my character story because my character was also like nobility of that sort of thing. But the Red Prince was like destined to marry, I can't remember her like name. It was like Sasha or something, but it's something like that. And it's basically, I was like, you know, it was basically sort of like a love triangle we ended up making throughout the story. You know, the one, like his adventuring party, which was my character. I can't remember what on earth she was called. You know, I can actually find out a way, because I used her again in that birthday gift to a friend of that card game. So let me see. Adventurer? It's just called Adventurer? No, that's not right. Her name is Darling? I felt like she had a really long, like, second name, which is what I always refer to her as, like, Lady something something, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. That doesn't sound right. Was that right? Maybe that's right. Is that right? Weird. Oh well. Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. I probably just called her Darling because I'm like, Dear Darling. Or maybe I probably called her Darling Dear. I bet you that's what I did, because I was like, her first name can't be Dear. It doesn't make sense. She's not a deer. Anyway, whatever. We'll call her Aravela, despite the fact she's not called Aravela, which is actually one of my D&D characters from before. Lady Aravela Meodistudith. She was like one of my first, my second, I think, D&D character. Anyway, not point. Let's call her Aravela, despite the fact that's not her name. Where it's like a love triangle, because Aravela was like from nobility. She was like a noble scholar, and that she was the one who was adventuring through Red Princess this entire time. And it was just like, you can imagine it from a storytelling perspective. It's like a will they, won't they sort of thing. The fact that Red Prince is like vying for the affection of this other like royal princess from like a different family, and it's just like, oh, is a like, love triangle. Who's Red Prince going to choose at the end? And then it's the thing where they mutually decided that, Aravela and Red Prince was like, no, we can't. This is not a relationship which can happen, obviously, just because of the circumstances we are in. But it's like we can still have this one moment before he gets married. Also, it's something like that, which is kind of weird, I suppose, to think about. It feels a bit like, what's the word, like adulterous, isn't it? But I don't know. But the laws of high fantasy are certainly different. In fact, I remember I just had to like look up the cutscene afterwards to be like, what is the Red Prince's conclusion story? And it's basically like, they have like an honest conversation, being like, who are you going to choose, me or her? And then I think it's like a player character, and he's like, oh, I can't choose you, sorry. And I remember the player character is like, yeah, I don't think you should either, but we can still have this moment, I suppose, before you get married off or something. And it's like, oh, that's like a nice story arc, I suppose, to bring the entire conclusion full circle, instead of in our playthrough where he just went, oh, I don't really know you that well, sorry, bye, also I'm going to try and kill you in the final cutscene. In the final fight, which is like, okay, that's how it happens. But, I just substitute what Red Prince's story actually should have been with like what actually happened in our game, because it makes more narrative sense to me. It's just fun. It's so dramatic. It feels like something out of drama, isn't it? This is the adventuring party. There's like a will they, won't they sort of thing going on between the adventuring to the members, but one of them vying for this other princess, or like kind of have to be, I suppose, through like royal duties or whatever. But then that party member also accompanying the entire time. It's like, I don't know. It sounds better in my head, I think I'm a better storyteller in my head than I am out loud, which is a bit of a shame, and I also don't remember the details so well. I just remember watching the cutscene and just being like, oh, that would have tied up the story arc so perfectly. That's just like exactly what I thought was going to happen. But anyway, that doesn't really matter, because that's the power of YouTube, is the fact I could just look up that video and be like, yeah, that happened. I can pretend that happened for playthrough. That's how it happened narratively in my head. Anyway, what am I talking about? I don't know. CRPGs. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty cool, probably. I've only played one, but I had a lot of fun with it. And on that note, I am going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again. But for now, it's up there. Well, so until next time, bye-bye for now. Where's my mouse? There it is.